Have you ever either been in an abusive relationship or had to talk to someone who was in one and they were coming to you for advice on how to fix it? Well, that's what it's like for me and for a lot of us right now, talking to people who are just opening their eyes and waking up to how bad things are in the schools. And they're coming to us and saying, "Where do I go to fix it?" So, today in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the challenge of talking to parents and other concerned citizens, taxpayers, even teachers about reforming education or fixing the schools or taking back the schools. And I'm going to, draw a comparison you might not agree with, but it's one that I can't not see. Like once I thought of it, it's just been so clear to me. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but I'm going to go ahead and spell it out for you. And you'll let me know in the comments, I hope. Before I get into that, though, I would like to ask you to please like and share this video. Consider subscribing to the channel if you're interested in content about education and everything that's going on with it. And also consider joining my locals community at thereasonwelearn.locals.com, where I do help my subscribers directly with the challenge of figuring out what to do to fix education for their own children, not to fix the system, okay? I also have a Substack at thereasonwelearn.substack.com where I do post audio versions of this content. And I do have some articles there. I will be adding more, of course. So that said, and I appreciate your support very much, let's get to this analogy. I pretty much told you what it is. It's an abusive relationship. People are in an abusive relationship with their schools. And I say people because it's all of us. It's all of us. It's not just those of us who have children right now. I don't even have children in the system, but I have children. So my children tend to interact with other children, and there are many children they would interact with who are in the system. Our children are going to grow up with those children. Those children are going, they're the majority, and they're going to end up running the country. So we as a people who pay for the schools and have, millions upon millions of children and adults involved with them and working in them and attending them and everything, are in an abusive relationship with them because, like an abusive relationship, there is a huge power imbalance. Now, leaving aside the irony that I am identifying an imbalance of power and privilege when it comes to us and the education establishment, the fact is there is one. I've covered it on this channel ad nauseum. I've had guests discuss it just yesterday with Unwokable. We talked about the behemoth that is, not just the education establishment, but also the administrative state that protects it. So you've got a whole layer protecting it, wrapped around it, and that's not even counting the teachers' unions that are sort of like a thin layer in between. It's just got layers upon layers upon layers of protection. So, that's an enormous amount of power and control over money, not to mention legal enforcement power over our children in terms of truancy laws and just the fact that education is compulsory, the fact that every person involved with education is a mandatory reporter and can tell government authorities that we're abusing our children if they want to, and then we have to pretty much prove that we're not. I mean, it's a pretty scary situation. So when you're in a relationship like that where the power is so skewed towards the system, where a couple of phone calls and your kid could be removed from your home and you'd be fighting to get them back. And that has actually happened in recent days and weeks to people. Then the potential for abuse is huge. It's huge. I mean, you need the most virtuous of people to not take advantage of that level of power with more vulnerable people who are dependent on them. Okay? I'm not saying that such an imbalance always creates an abusive situation, but in this case it has. And in many cases it does. So The stage is set. They have the power. And here's how it's manifesting as abuse. If you want to change something, if you were to go just as you would to a spouse or a partner and say, our relationship is not how I want it to be. I have these needs. They're not being met. I would prefer that you do da-da-da, or I, am missing out on that, or whatever the case may be. The healthy relationship would be one where the communication lines are open and they would say, thank you so much for telling me. That had to have been difficult because I'm in a position of power. I have more money, or whatever the case may be. And I appreciate the honesty and that you could trust me enough to be vulnerable. And I'm going to really try hard to, take that into account and make necessary changes. Oh, by the way, I would appreciate if you and you have a conversation, and maybe that's a healthy relationship. But in the abusive relationship, first of all, generally speaking, you don't even know how to approach your abuser. You don't even know how to approach the person or entity with whom you're having trouble. There's a sense of walking on eggshells. There's a feeling of inferiority. There's a feeling of trepidation, like you don't want to rock the boat. That if just simply voicing your opinion that you don't like how things are could back up on you, back up on your children, back up on your job. I mean, the bad things could happen. You could lose friends. Okay. So the incentive when it's abusive is to just like, it'll be fine. Do I really need this? Is this really important? And you either suppress it or push it to the periphery or whatever, and you kind of don't let it dominate, or you start checking around for other people who know the person or have relationships with the person. Well, they seem to like him and her, and they get along, and then I'll be the only one. I mean, everybody else likes them. Everybody else thinks that, they won't believe me. And this is true, especially if it's not physically abusive and you don't have bruises to show and police reports to file. If it's more emotional, financial, things like that, which is what we have with the schools. Although, like I said, it's getting physical with the DSS and so forth. But, your inclination is not to rock the boat. That's very, very common. You're just going to make it through. Just going to make the best of it. I made my bed. I'm going to lie in it. There's good to outweigh the bad, whatever the case may be. And you rationalize and you fool yourself into thinking that you can take it, except in most abusive situations, things get worse. They don't just stay where they are, because people who have abusive tendencies, systems that have abusive tendencies, even, and the people in them, are rarely satisfied with what they have. That's kind of why they're abusers. They are looking to add to their power for its own sake. And they're not going to be satisfied with the status quo like you're trying to be. So they might up the ante. Well, in the schools, that's what they're doing. We see it. They're escalating. It wasn't enough to have a DEI director. It wasn't enough to have an equity plan. It wasn't enough, to incorporate a little bit more sex ed. It wasn't enough to do, put pronouns and things. Now we're getting into teachers should be able to keep secrets from parents about gender stuff. We should be able to talk about sex with kindergartners. You're a bigot if you don't allow it. You're racist if you don't want to go through struggle sessions and, or wear a rainbow sweatshirt as a teacher on Pride Day. I mean, it's escalating. It's just more. The subtext, as it is in an abusive interpersonal relationship, is you don't love me, you don't care about me, you aren't really who you said you were. You're a bad person if you don't do fill in the blank. It's a kind of extortion. Now, in this case, it's a literal extortion, but there's an emotional component to it too, because your child is wrapped up in the middle of that. So there's an emotional extortion. You're hurting your children. Do you really want to hurt your children? And then people around you who aren't as caught up on this as you are and don't really see the abuse yet like you do, like your partner's mom or sister or best friend, why are you being so nitpicky? Why are you doing that? They do so much for you. These people, he's a hero. She's a queen, whatever. It's the same with the schools. Are you starting to see the analogy? It's really similar. Where you, the critic, you the one who wants to fix it. You the one who say, like, this isn't healthy. This isn't good. This isn't good for the children. This isn't good for me. This isn't good for you. This isn't good for any of us. This is getting to be toxic and really unpleasant, and I don't like dealing with it anymore. And they think it's fine. It's working exactly the way they want it to work. They're getting out of you what they need to get out of you. And when you start, pushing back and they start getting worried that they're not going to continue to get out of you what they're getting out of you, whether it's money or attention or time or adulation or deference, whatever it is, yeah, they push back really hard. That's when sometimes verbally abusive relationships turn physically abusive. Is when the person says, I'm not going to take this verbal abuse anymore. Then it escalates to hitting or removing children from the home. You see how this is analogous? Okay. Because healthy relationships, partnerships where people are working in concert with each other for the good of whatever, for the good of what they value, in this case, children and their well-being and their, growth and education. People who are really working on that will do a bunch of things very differently than schools and the establishment are doing right now. Well, the first thing they'll do is they'll be completely transparent and open. They will welcome constructive criticism. They will try to meet you halfway and compromise. They will not smear you, badmouth you, or seek to, gaslight you and just straight up lie to you and try to make you feel like you're the crazy one. Okay. They don't engage in shame and blame. They don't threaten. They don't do any of the things that the schools and their supporters are doing right now. They just don't do that. That's not what a healthy relationship does. It doesn't mean healthy relationships always go minute rice perfect and everybody's happy and, whatever. There are power imbalances in healthy relationships. Sometimes the people agree to financial, et cetera, whatever, who does the labor at home and so forth. And you might even be happy with that to a point. It doesn't become abusive until the person who has more of that power, whatever that kind of power is, starts exploiting it. And that's what schools have been doing for as long as I've been alive. It's just now gotten to the physically abusive stage. It's gotten to the stage where parents are afraid of losing their children, first emotionally and then physically. This is actually happening. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, if I told you that things that are happening were going to happen, you would have told me I was insane. Just like if you were newly married to the love of your life and he was just belittling you here and there on the side, like a little comment here, a little comment there. And if I'd come in and having been a keen observer of abusive relationships and said, I'd watch out, you're about half a dozen years away from getting slapped. You probably would have disassociated with me and told me I was a crazy person. But there's a pretty standard logical progression to these things when you're treating people disrespectfully and doing those kinds of things to someone you claim to care about and love and share values with. And it's not 100%, but, it's pretty accurate. It's pretty easy to predict. So if you are faced with someone saying, how do I get involved in fixing it? What do I do? Where do I go? I want to fix it. Recommend somebody to help me fix it. Think about that. Think about you're talking to somebody who is just beginning to wake up to the fact that they're in an abusive relationship. And what would you say to them? Would you say, get out? Like that day? I mean, you might. Depends. Again, if they're getting hit, you probably say that. And I have said that to some parents who are really up against it. I've said, you got to leave. You've got to leave. Like if a parent comes to me and says, they are transitioning my child as we speak. You hope you can get out still. If you find out, well, my kid came home and said, I don't know, I might be you get out before they catch wind of what your child is saying and then want to make you the bad guy for not letting them, affirming, and progressing towards transitioning. So, and that's just with that one issue. So you might say that then. But if it's not to that point, if it's to the point where it's like, I don't like the books they're reading, and I don't, or whatever, I'm just starting to figure it out, or my kid hasn't shown me any of this stuff, but this is what's going on. You're probably not going to launch into get out. Instead, what I would recommend, because this tends to work better, people need to come to their own conclusions, even in abusive relationships, is to ask them, what it is that you like about schools that you want to fix them? Like, what is it you like? And they'll tell you. There are things people like about school. Lots of things. And then you can listen to what those things are and then find the ones, because it will be pretty easy and some of them will fit into this category. Find the ones that aren't even true. Okay, just like with the abusive relationship, the abuser will say, "Well, I like that he's this and he's that and he's other." And well, is he funny and making you laugh when he belittles you about your weight? Is he, a great provider when he goes out and spends a bunch of money with the guys, drinking and you can't pay the bill? I know he works hard, but is that, I mean, and not to pick on men, could be a woman too. Well, she loves me and thinks I'm her hero, whatever. Really, and that's is when she cheated on you last year. Was she doing that? I mean, whatever the case may be, find out what they like about the school, and then if there's something there, because I'm sure there will be. Well, that's where their friends are. Are you sure their friends are doing well right now? Are you sure their relationship with their friends are healthy? They're there, they're physically in the building, but is that worth it? You obviously have some pretty big things you want to fix. Do the friends live at the school, or can they leave and associate with your child outside the school? So get to the bottom of what is it they like about the school. Well, it's my childcare. Okay, what do you do in the summer? Right? You're not talking them out of the school so much as helping them to arrive at the realization that that list of things they say they like about it either isn't real anymore or is a list of rationalizations for maintaining the status quo and just trying to fix it. And then the next thing you can do is say, okay, well, given that we've just eliminated, these three things that you think you like about it, and now we're only left with, whatever, two. Now let's talk about the fixing part. In order for me to recommend organizations or avenues you can take to fixing it, I need to know what that would look like. What would fix look like? Same thing in a relationship, right? What would fix look like? Well, he wouldn't, he would be nice to me and he wouldn't come home angry and blame me for the laundry not being done or whatever. He wouldn't, make me feel like I'm walking on eggshells. It's like, okay, well, you've been together X amount of time. Has he, noticed that you're uptight or whatever? Oh, I told him. Okay. So he's had all this time to try to fix it with you, to notice that you're uncomfortable, to hear you saying you're uncomfortable. What happens when you do that? Oh, he gets really mad. Da, 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 da. Okay. So he's already telling you, I am disinclined to change, or I'm really adamant I'm not gonna, or, you are the problem for wanting him to change. Okay. Well, now transpose that onto the school. You're at the school board meeting, talking into a microphone, even politely. You're not even yelling. And you've stony faces sitting there or saying they can't do anything. Or then the police show up and tell you, your time is up, stop talking. Or they shut down public comment altogether. And now you're saying, I want to fix it. Are they showing any inclination to fixing it? Or you go higher than that. Or you go to the teacher, or you go to the superintendent, you go to the principal, and you hear something that sounds vaguely like, if only you weren't such a problem, you wouldn't need to fix anything. If only you. We're just trying to make you and your children better people. We're just trying to help you rid yourself of what's bad about you. Or, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not happening. That thing that you saw with your own eyes and heard with your own ears. What are you talking about? You're paranoid. That's gaslighting. You're doing that too. So those are not the behaviors of people or organizations that are interested in changing or being fixed. And they're bigger than you. They're more powerful than you. And they have more money than God. So, like I said, when you ask them what fix would look like and what they think the process ought to be, then you can say, well, interestingly, I agree with you. That's what the process ought to be, except it's not. And it doesn't work that way. And then you can start to explain if you know. And if you don't, you can probably go find out pretty easily or tell them to. What the process actually would be to just do like that little thing. Like, well, I think they should hire a different superintendent who isn't so woke. Or I think the teachers shouldn't be XYZ. Okay. Well, sure. I totally agree with you. I think he shouldn't be such a blowhard anger ball. Okay. So, well, how would you fix all those people? I mean, it's hard to do with one person when you're in a relationship. Imagine when you've got a school full of dozens or hundreds of people who have no inclination to change and see you as the problem. You see where I'm going with this? It's a weird way to go about it when talking to people like that. But like I said, you're going to be hard pressed to go, you need to get out. You need to just homeschool. You got to get, look, I've tried it. It doesn't work very well. And as I said, there are some, when I see someone's like, you're getting beaten, it's like, go to the shelter, right? Okay. There are people that I have said, leave, get your kid out of the school. Okay. Severe bullying situations, real risk of losing their child. Okay. I have said that unequivocally. I'm not even talking to you about reform at this point for you. But it's those beginning steps. That's what I'm talking about. The people at the beginning of discovery. And there's millions of them. Okay. As much as it seems, especially if you wallow around in my content for a while and you feel like, certainly everybody must feel this way. No, they really don't. The vast majority of parents still really don't know what's going on. They really don't understand. They're busy. They're trying to live their lives. Schools were closed for 2 years. They're just like, and now they're starting to see things are weird. Why is there a pride parade for my kindergartner? Why are they talking about sex? Why is my child coming home and telling me that, we need to decenter our whiteness? What? Those are the people who are just starting to realize something's not right and their first inclination is want to fix it. Okay. So I think if you get that impression in your mind, I'm talking to somebody in an abusive relationship, I need to keep talking to them. I need to make sure they're still willing to talk to me. I need to build trust. I need them to, build trust in themselves, because that's what happens in a long-term abusive relationship, especially one that's a slow drip. People don't trust themselves. Parents don't trust themselves right now. They still, no matter what horrible things have been done to them by the schools, masking, mandatory vaccines, closings, they still somewhere deep, deep, deep in their lizard brain feel like those are the experts and they're not. Not consciously, but just like the abused spouse doesn't consciously think, well, he or she is better than me. That's just what they're trained to feel, because that's how they got through each day in the power imbalance. So let me know what you think about this analogy. I think it's pretty apt, but I'm sure that it's rough around the edges. It's just I can't unsee it, put it that way. I hope you got something out of this content. And again, I thank you in advance for supporting the channel. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening.